and welcome to another episode of Talk'n TRM, the podcast dedicated to travel risk management. My name is Bex Deadman, also known as Travel Risk Bex. I'm really looking forward to our guest's conversation today because we're going to cover an area that actually we don't talk about so much because we don't tend to talk about the journeys of how people kind of get into their roles. And when I caught up with this person a few weeks ago and we talked about this, I was literally like, please come on, you have to come and talk about this. So I'm really looking forward to sharing it with you. We've actually met through LinkedIn and through all the work that we do in travel risk management. This person works program side, and she runs a program and is an advocate, I would say, of 3130. So we're looking forward to hearing all of what you've got to teach us. So without further ado, may I ask who you are and what you do?
Sure, thanks, Bex. So my name is Ceri McQueen. I am the Global Travel Risk Lead for Dyson. So essentially I sit in our physical security operations team, and I'm responsible for the safety of our employees.
Thank you. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that everyday life is like for you, that role?
Yeah, sure. So the role's been going about 2 years. I manage our travel assistance vendor. I also manage all of the travel, so that whether that's like employees, exec, and also looking at our international signees. So everything from making sure that people book the right way and follow the policy, to helping them out in an incident and a crisis, to giving them advice on going to high-risk countries, or just supporting. We have a number of students that travel with us, so just supporting them with kind of like, the whole anxiety and business travel and all those kinds of different things.
Thank you. So now our listeners are just going, because there's a link there, isn't there? What you're doing, and you just said, you're responsible. I loved is the fact that you said that you're responsible for looking after your travellers. That was your first sort of point of what you do. But actually what you've done within your role is combined the assistance piece, but also the travel management piece, which is something that we are seeing a little bit more of coming up now. But actually it's still quite rare for organisations because often, again, let's remember, not organisations manage travel at all. So this only happens when you become a sort of larger organisation or a global organisation. You don't really see travel managers in SME roles, despite there obviously being a lot of travellers and a lot of the supply chain that we all use are SMEs. But often you still see this separated. So what are some of I think just it's worth exploring it before we get into your why and into your story, but what are some of the advantages of bringing those two things together from your perspective?
For me, I see a lot of people in the industry that are like security managers or regional security managers that kind of add on the travel piece to it. And I think me having this dedicated role and being responsible, banging on about ISO 3130 until the cows come home, just allows me to focus on it so much better. So it is my focus kind of all day, every day. I can talk to like our key traveller groups. I can think about things that maybe other security managers might not have time to think about. It gives us that time, and our employees feel like they're cared for. That's my goal anyway, and the business's goal. So it works quite well.
It really excites me hearing you talk about it, and it did when we first had this conversation, because for me, the idea of a travel manager role, as was 20 or 30 years ago, when it was much more about negotiation. And don't get me wrong, that's still where a lot of travel management role sits, and it's an important part of what we do. But the reality is that nowadays you're really not negotiating that much, as far as you're unless you're spending a huge amount of money. There's not it's the travel companies that own the negotiations, really, not the corporates at this stage. What a travel manager can do, though, and one of their really valuable skill sets is this ability to be able to talk to lots of different people, and they are people. I'd argue, and I'm going to offend loads of people in HR potentially, but I would argue that perhaps travel people are more people than some HR people are, because and I get the reasons why, but it's more to do so this caring piece, this empathy piece, but this also ability to connect and have relationships with multiple stakeholders, because that's what you've been doing when you've been managing travel programs. You can then mirror that back into the organization, and you can be the key that draws those stakeholders internally together, but doing it from the perspective of the traveller and this point of duty of care. And I just think it's really exciting, because it's something that I bang on about all the time, that I think that this is the evolution. There's lots of talk about AI taking over the requirements of a travel manager, and I disagree with that. I think yes, they could definitely make things easier, but this personal bit, this bit of understanding and taking someone's hand if they're scared and talking them through a process, AI can never do that like a human can do that, and I think that's the new role. So when you started talking to me, I was just like, brilliant. Thank goodness people are beginning to do this. And, you say it's a new role for Dyson. I think lots of companies aren't quite there with this at all. So I think hats off to you guys for even recognizing that it was something that needed to be done. And it's really, really important. So let's get into your journey then as to how you got there. And I guess your why and your passion in all of this. So I know that you love 31030, and I agree that it's a really good benchmark for everything. But let's talk way before that. Let's get to, how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, it's a bit of a niche journey, but if I go back all the way to the start of my career, I finished school, didn't go to college, not an academic person, would just rather get on and do things. So I basically joined a company as a apprentice office assistant, and I was there for 7 years, and when I left I was their marketing manager. I then went into events and did event management, which was amazing, but then realised that it would be really nice not to work till midnight every night, because I used to organise corporate award ceremonies. And then I went into being an executive assistant. And then I applied for a job at Dyson to be the executive assistant to the security director. And I went to Dyson. It was like a maternity contract. So it was like a 12-month cover contract. And 6 years later, I'm still there. So I was the executive assistant to the security director at the time. He then left about 6 months later, and then the new security director came. And I have to say, like, he's still my mentor now. He really took me under his wing and supported me and really did a lot for me. I then moved into loss prevention and ended up interviewing a lot of people and doing a lot around asset protection and loss of assets and things like that. And then our regional security director actually left the business, and he was the one that was responsible for travel risk. And I'd spent a lot of time with him anyway, and I knew the vendor really well. So it just kind of made sense. Ceri, would you like to go and be the travel risk lead? And I was kind of like, well, yeah, but I know a very limited amount about travel risk. So I then spent like the next 6 months, and they were very kind to me and spent a lot of time training me. I read ISO 3130 until it was ingrained in my brain. And that was kind of my role to set and map out, created like a travel policy for travel security, and brought in those stakeholders, like you were saying. So the travel and expense team, our global mobility team, our insurance team. And then it was kind of, now it's like, how did we never have this role? How have we existed without this role? But that's kind of my very unorthodox way into security and into travel risk.
And isn't it great? I hope everyone listening to this who isn't necessarily in travel risk, because we have our diehard travel riskers, and I'm kind of always on the other side of this, who are, you know what, it's about a little bit more than this. I don't claim to be an expert in security, and I think some of what you say mirrors how I've got to what I do. But I do have a big understanding of the travel industry, and I do understand how these things fit together. So when things fall through the cracks, I can understand how to fix those. So this isn't about me. Let's talk about you, because as you were talking and I was smiling to myself, I was like, she's literally done it throughout her career. And obviously some of that's through luck and not necessarily knowing what you were doing. I appreciate that at the time. You didn't know that you were going to end up in a travel risk management role when you applied for a role as the EA for the security director. But you've literally been able to touch on all of these disciplines or areas within an organization, so that now you've got a powerhouse of skills that you can use to your advantage. Way back to when you started in marketing, which may not even think that has anything to do with it, but you know how to communicate. You've got a comms background just there, a communications background, and it's one of the missing pieces that we often get really wrong when we're trying to put a program together, because we just, we spend a lot of time getting the tech right, and then we just throw it out there. We send an email and we expect it to all be all right. And it isn't often. You really need to kind of embed this in, and there has to be a communication strategy around it. So even just starting there, I was like, yes, tick, brilliant. But then moving on into the other bits and pieces that you've done as you've gone through, you've been able to touch on these different areas. So as I was sort of going back to earlier, I think this is a really natural progression for a lot of travel managers. I just think you're one of the first to then kind of move into the security piece as well. But this is what I'm trying to encourage other travel managers to think about, because actually, as you've rightly said, how do you do without these roles? At the moment, it's a kind of let's just hope everything's going to be okay and nothing happens, because if it does, then we've got one situation. But actually, by putting this role in place, you're suddenly in a place where you can proactively think about these things and prevent things from happening. Now, you can't stop a situation happening, but you can obviously then mitigate how the effect afterwards. But when you put someone like you in place, all of those questions around, well, how do we look after the well-being of our travellers? How do we integrate, their mental health requirements or neurodiversity into our programs? How do we think about this carbon strategy, and how do we do reduction? There's suddenly a place for all of this under travel risk management, but all of it's embedded in this understanding of duty of care. We're not telling you not to spend money anymore. We are going to keep an eye on that. Of course we are. But actually, this is around looking after you as a person. And I think if you can get that language right, then I think you're winning. And I think it's really, really inspiring for people like me, but also like lots of others, because a lot of travel managers do evolve in the way that you did, from being perhaps an office manager or being an EA, because that's how a company works, right? So when a company's small, you don't have all of these different roles, but you will have someone taking. So I think that's a really natural progression, and I'm just really inspired that you've taken it this far. So I want to get a bit deeper. Why do you love it? What is the why? What is it that drives you? Because you're so enthused about it. So what is it that kind of makes you excited to do your job every day?
I think the why, just wider for security, is doing the right thing, right? Doing the right thing by our people. We've got a really strong security culture, which I know not everybody has. So we're really lucky that our people are listening to what we're saying, which helps most of the time. But it's about the why for me personally, as in, why are we doing this? Why does this person book this way? Like, why are they worried, or why are they scared? Or like, we've got students and they might be traveling for business for the very first time. We had an incident on Friday night at 11 p.m. I've got someone at an airport who's really struggling, needs some help, and I need to help them, and I think that's really nice. We're not, I'm not going to pretend we're on the front line, but it is nice to be able to support our employees and then get them out of the situation that they're in. They feel reassured, they feel like they're safe and everything's okay. So I think it's more about doing the right thing. I'm a very empathetic person. I mean, you will get two versions of me. I get described as tenacious a lot. So that'll be if you're booking outside the policy and I find you, then then you might get tenacious, Ceri. But most of the time it's like, I want to understand the why, which is exactly what I did as an EA when I came to Dyson. I was like, right, I want to understand every part of security. I knew nothing about security. I was like writing these notes and I was like, I don't know what anyone's saying. There's acronyms flying around. Like, I don't know what anyone is talking about. So I did like a Security Institute management course because I was like, I need to know like how this works, which made me pick like, oh, okay, I want to do this discipline or that part of security. But I think it's for travel risk is like understanding why are employees behaving this way, how can we help them, how can we make this like easier and better so they actually want to do the right thing.
I just smile all the time that you're talking. First of all, you use the word empath on my podcast, so thank you. Because yes, I talk about it all the time. But this idea of putting yourself in the place of your traveller, right? This idea of going through the motions of. I was chatting to another incredible program manager, another female in this space, just recently, and her podcast will come out this year too. And again, there's things that she was saying that are echoing in what you're saying. You're not thinking about this from here's my data that's come back from my TMC. I'm reviewing it to just look at numbers and what I'm doing and all that kind of stuff. You're actually thinking about this from the person's lived experience. And I talk a lot, and I say it all the time in this podcast, those lines on a spreadsheet are people's lived experiences, and we don't make that easy for them. I was chatting to a traveller the other day, and he said that in the peak of his travel years, there was a time he had 27 apps on his phone to be able to find the right airline tickets, the assistance app. None of it makes sense, and technology could do so much better than all of this stuff. But think about it from your traveler's perspective, and I love your this attitude of course we all go really, and yes, it does always happen at 11 o'clock at night, guaranteed on a Friday, or just as you want to go home and meet your friends for a drink or whatever it is you're doing. That's when it always used to hit us. But they're not going to be calling you because they're trying to disrupt your Friday night, right? There's a reason that they're calling you. And to put yourself in their situation, which is exactly what you described, is just such an important thing to be doing. And I think that's when we bring the people element into this. Now, security do that all the time. It's a big piece of what they do, right? It's about protection. It's all of that. But I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves that we're dealing with lots of different types of people. And it's not always going to be a security concern. It could be just a delay, and that worries somebody because they don't know what to do next. There's everyday occurrences that wouldn't necessarily require a big security intervention, but that person requires care nonetheless. And I think it's about getting that balance right. And it sounds like that's the stuff that you're putting in place, which is really exciting. So there's a couple of things that I want to talk to you about before we get on to the final question. You mentioned ISO 31030, so I want to just talk about that a little bit. How have you used it? Because there's a real block for some people. They don't quite know how to use it, but you've built your whole program around it, which was kind of the intention of it, at least. So how have you done that?
Yeah, so for me, obviously I was coming into this role. I'd just come out of loss prevention and security coordination. So I knew a little bit about travel risk. I'd been involved in some incidents and called our employees. And when I was doing that, I remember thinking, well, this is really cool. I'd really like to do this. So I was really fortunate that our previous security director, before he left, had done a gap analysis using ISO 31030, but I was like, it was basically the tool to build the whole program because it was just me. I was like, I need to understand this. I need to build our program around it. The business were really keen that we did that. So we really started with that gap analysis. It was like, okay, what are the key things that we need to do first of all? So like writing a travel security policy which we didn't have and getting that approved by our exec. Was kind of like first point of call, and then what vendors are we using? So it was just one of those things where like this makes total sense for me to know about. We should build our program around this. We know where our gaps are. We did have some things in place. We'd been with an assistance partner for about 6 years. Travel was picking up again after COVID, and we really needed to be ready if something happened. And now we've got this dedicated role as well. I wanted to also be like, we're compliant, we're against this standard, we're using this to guide us. This is how the role's going to work. This is how travel risk will work in the organisation. And it just helped me enormously to do that.
And that's it, right? It gives you a framework. You don't have to, you then do what you want to do and you apply the logic, but you just use this as a logical step through. It does it from an aerial view, I think, a holistic view, rather than getting lost in those silos or departments that we talk about. We're actually, again, I guess, experiencing the traveller journey through the standard. Again, that's very much how it reads to me, those different areas that you need to consider. And it's really great, again, to hear you talk about it. And obviously, we are a massive advocate, as we all know. So anyone sort of using it, I kind of want to get to that and be able to talk about it a bit more. So thank you. There's still loads of people, believe it or not, that haven't even heard of it, and we get lost sometimes because we work in this space all the time, or I work heavily in this space all the time, and we talk about it as if everyone should know about it, and they don't. So I think what you've talked about today will be really helpful for people, so thank you. So there's just another thing, is you just touched on your concerns your travellers' concerns or their fears. Is this something, because I talk quite a lot about trying to look after your different travellers' needs, right? And we've got different generations travelling. We obviously have different requirements medically, physically, as well as all the activities that we're doing. And we've got this kind of diehard, what we call, the sort of the diehard travellers that have been doing it for years, that are quite difficult to control in one way. But I've talked to people and they've noticed that the younger travellers, there's quite a lot of fear about traveling to places these days. Is that something you've experienced? And if it is, how do you deal with that?
We definitely do experience it. So we have Sir James has a university on site. So as part of their program, they get a 6-month placement away, either in Singapore or Greater China, somewhere in APAC. Some of our students go to EMEA, so it's like that is the first time they've travelled, probably for business ever. They're away from home, they've got accommodation, but even just like employees that haven't travelled in a while, and this might sound slightly odd, but I actually have a lot of anxiety around travel because I have celiac disease. So me going somewhere is like, are they going to poison me? What's the airline going to give me? Like, am I going to get ill? How am I going to eat? So I think I can empathise with these people a lot more. And some of our students, like the questions, they might be a bit not your traditional like security question, but it matters to them, and they want to know. So we do briefings before they go, and then our security managers in the region will meet them when they're there. And they'll give them their contact numbers and be like, we're here for you, like, contact us anytime. And more often than not, they don't really get that many calls, but it's like they feel they've got somebody there, like, looking after them, or where can they go at the weekend? Is this safe? Is that safe? And I would much rather they ask us than just go and do it and we don't know. So really we're there to protect them. And like you said, you've got those people that have travelled for business for like years and years and years, and they just go, okay, Ceri, like I've read the briefing, like thanks very much, which is fine. But there are travellers that aren't students and they aren't seasoned travellers. They're somewhere in the middle and they're like, I haven't travelled for ages. Like, what do I do? How do I do this? So something that I'm doing this year is a lot more work on traveller profiles. So those like key travellers, neurodiverse travellers, our LGBTQ+, our new travel assistance provider are doing a whole e-learning module on that, which I think people try and get to that, but I'm not ever sure if they do. So I would like for us to make sure that we're taking people's concerns. So really what I want to do, rather than go and deliver training, is sit with, we have specific sort of like key groups within Dyson that people will join if they want to, like a neurodiverse network and things like that, and sit with them and say, what do you feel when you travel? What can we do to make it easier for you? Would you feel better if you could read like risk ratings or country reports or incidents that might have happened and things like that? So I spend a lot of time with our employees. I do like monthly sessions with everybody, taking them through like key behaviours. It's just me talking at people, but people come, so that's the important thing. But at least they know, we're there for them, we care. There are things you can do that make it maybe a little bit less scary. I'm not going to get to the people that have travelled, every week for years and years and years, but we can prevent some of those incidents with the less frequent travellers.
I think that's great. And I think so often these are the travellers that are overlooked because so much focus is obviously, if we're taking a spend mentality, so much focus is on your top travellers from that perspective, or you're more experienced travellers, you're more frequent travellers. Whereas actually there's this whole area when we consider risk of your infrequent travellers. Again, you get this other area as well because of the university piece, which is great because you're also not just about 31 or 30, are you? You're going to be thinking about 31 now too, which is excellent. Get little mitts on that. But it's just this people focus and being able to offer them. And I think you made a really, really important point, which is, that they've got they've got a number that they can call, but they hardly take any calls. And some people would say, well, that's a wasted resource because we hardly ever use it, right? And it is statistically unlikely that things are going to happen. But my goodness, if you really want to prove to your employees that you care and you know how to do it, that's just something that's really essential because they'll then start using it for other things and you'll start building trust about other bits and pieces. So there's a couple of other companies that I know of who are really, really successful in this space by turning this on its head, doing exactly what you're talking to people. Thank you, Ceri. Thank you. Talking to your travellers, oh my goodness, and finding out what their requirements are, not just making assumptions for them. Oh, you're neurodiverse, so you must need this, or you're LGBTQI, so you must need this. No. Talk to them. You can't have these conversations you can't make decisions for them without having them in the room. Wow. Okay. So I told everybody that I wanted to get you on. You see, for me, this is the future of travel risk management. I don't want to make this into Ceri's the most amazing person in the world. I mean, she's pretty cool. But I think what you're doing in your role is really, really important. And I think a lot of people could look at this and strive to kind of move in this direction, because this is what we talk about. It's what I talk about through the Travel Risk Academy. It's what I talk about on this podcast all the time. It's taking a holistic, people-focused approach, taking the time to talk to people and then giving them what they need. And actually, it's not that difficult, is it? It's not rocket science. It's just a bit time-consuming. But once you get into that and people trust you, it doesn't even feel time-consuming anymore, does it? So I think the issue people have with it is they're so stuck in having to deal with their everyday. This feels like a big thing to do, to have to go and have conversations with people. They don't want to go and do that. But honestly, that's the way. So I'm going to stop and I'm going to pass back to you and ask you if you could summarize or give us, our listeners, your top tips or your golden nuggets in this space, please. We're all ears.
Okay, so probably for travel security managers or regional security managers or anyone that deals with travel risk, is everything we've been talking about. Like, it's really, really simple, but listening to your employees, listening to their concerns. And I think a lot of the time, like, security is enforcement, right? That's what people see it as. That's what the business sees it as. Like, we're not bringing in money, we're taking out money, but it is enforcement a lot of the time. And don't get me wrong, I am not always the warm shoulder, like, put my arm around people. A lot of the time I'm like, why did you book this? You can't book Airbnbs. What are you doing? But also, why are you doing that? Why are you behaving in that way? How can we make it better? What is the whole experience like? I spend a lot of time with our travel and expense team. We work together really well, and actually we could clash a lot, but we do work together really, really well. And I just think it's like trying to own the whole piece is really hard on your own. Yeah. And once you've got those great like stakeholder relationships, again with even our global mobility team, we're responsible for them where they are, whereas they're responsible for them for the whole entirety of their assignment. But we still need to make sure their family have the right, medical care, and they have that, and they feel safe where they are. So I think just saying, okay, well, I don't own that. It's not really me. That's not really my bag. Whereas if we look at the whole piece, I mean, we have student teams that take great care of our students, and really, I'm very one small little piece that they get to travel and we make sure they're okay. But once we learn, okay, we know they're traveling here, or we know this is happening, then we can support them. And it kind of brings the whole program together. Now, I do have the luxury of doing this every day, so I have a lot more time to think about it than others. But my advice really is just trying to bring everybody together that's involved in your space and listening to what your employees have to say, because I know that sometimes it can be irritating and you're just trying to do your job and get it done. But they do have useful things to say, and it will make your life a lot easier.
Further down the line, right? This is the thing. It's a little bit. It's maybe a little bit of pain up front when you first start this, and you think you're going to decide. You have to talk to a lot of stakeholders. They're not just the department heads, but your travelers, your bookers, your external stakeholders. There's lots of people to get involved. Your expense team, everyone, finance, everyone. Basically, you have to talk to everyone in the whole company because everybody's affected in travel in some way. So I always say, you're going to have, and like you said, you're fortunate you have a role dedicated to it. But I reckon it is 6 months hard work talking to everyone to begin to get a real picture. Obviously, company size dependent, but to really get a full picture of what you're doing and being able to then put that program in. But once you've done it and then you've put in your lines of communication moving forward, your continuous improvement, which you'll know all about that, Ceri, then it makes it easier, right? Because you're creating a mechanism so people can come to you with stuff rather than you having to have these crazy conversations with everybody all the time. So it's about allowing people to do that and giving them their space. And it will be very noisy at first, it always is. But once they know they've got that space, actually, it quietens down a little bit more, doesn't it? So
yeah, then you kind of learn that, oh, actually, I didn't even know that was a stakeholder. I didn't even know that. Like, for instance, our comms team we work quite closely with because we have influencer travel. But I wasn't even factoring that in, that comms were a stakeholder or were part of travel. I was like, global mobility, insurance, tax, like, yeah, that's fine. I've got it all, expense, fine. But then you sort of learn, and I was like looking through all the different travel, and I'm like, okay, well, what's guest travel? What are we doing with that? And so it does take a while, it does, but it's worth doing. And once you've got a full view of what travel is in the organisation, then you can figure out how to manage it.
Right, that's it. If you can't see it, you can't manage it. So it's about a really deep dive, kind of. And I always say this, kind of rolling your sleeves up and getting your hands dirty. But then you can bring order out of the chaos, and it's better to have that than doing, like we said, crossing your fingers and hoping everything's going to be okay. Because unfortunately, most of the time it is okay, which is great. But when it does go wrong, it can go horribly wrong, and that's not right. And it is about doing the right thing. This is about duty of care, a legal requirement, but there's also a moral obligation here. And I think that's what I'm just going to say. Hats off to Dyson. Well done, guys. I'm really impressed. I'm really impressed that they put this role in place. But I'm also, super, super excited to talk to you, and I really look forward to hearing more about your journey as this role, progresses for you. And hopefully we get to do more things together because. Yeah, I think this is, you've heard it here. I think this is the way companies need to go. So yeah, well done, Dyson. Good work, and really good work, Ceri.
Thank you for having me. I always love talking to you, and I could talk forever. So thank you.
Well, we'll do a part 2. Don't worry. And I love talking to you too, and thank you so much for becoming a guest on the show, and thank you again, Dyson, for letting her do so. So you have been listening to Talking TRM with Bex Deadman and Ceri McQueen from Dyson, travel risk manager of the future, I'm going to say, as this is what we've just been talking about today. I'm going to make her blush now. But no, we've been talking about the role and what it can look like, and I think that's what's really, really important. So thank you so much. We'll be back soon with another episode, and in the meantime, please take care.